Morning 5 here on Friday, August 28th, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I am joined by the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. Bax, a lot of Ohio State fans seem to be concerned about wide receiver depth, especially for the first game of the season. Obviously, Ohio State's going to be down 4 of their top wide receivers for that opening game at Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech has an excellent secondary, a good defense overall, perhaps a great defensive coordinator. Noah Brown is out for the season with the broken leg. Really tough there because this is a guy that Urban Meyer, every time he got a chance to talk to us, was talking up Noah Brown, it seemed like. Big, physical guy with good hands. Tough break for the Buckeyes, no pun intended. 3 guys suspended for the opener, of course. Jalen Marshall, Corey Smith, Dontre Wilson, who's really an H-back. Answer the question, Bax. Are you concerned about depth at wide receiver for the first game? How big of an impact will it have for the Buckeyes against the Hokies?
I'll be very blunt. No, I'm not concerned. We're missing some of the biggest names on the team, which is really unfortunate for Ohio State. You're obviously going to be without Noah Brown, who was one of the starting receivers. You're without Jalen Marshall, who was one of the biggest playmakers in the team last year. Then there's, of course, Corey Smith, who was a big contributor last year down the stretch. Even if he annoyed some of us at times with his inconsistency, he was still a big-time player in terms of special teams. He made a lot of key blocks. I mean, the kid he decapitated in the Big Ten championship game on that one run it was unfairly thrown out of the game, kind of won him back for me. But let me read you some of the guys who are still available for Ohio State. First and foremost is Mike Thomas, who was on Mel Kiper's big board for this year's NFL Draft, the number 1 receiver a couple days ago. So that's a very positive step for Ohio State, having him available. They're also going to have available a guy by the name of Braxton Miller. I hear he can make some plays. He's not too shabby. Then you've got guys on top of that. Johnny Dixon, who appears to be healthy, and people are comparing to Santonio Holmes. I mean, that's a big-time player right there that we're going to get to see finally on the field after a year of injuries last year. You're talking about Torrance Gibson. Everybody was talking about his sheer raw athleticism. Maybe he wasn't as polished as Noah Brown was going to be, but Torrance Gibson's going to be a big-time playmaker for the Buckeyes. And then you have a guy like Curtis Samuel, who's going to play that hybrid role as well. He may be out catching passes on top of that. And, of course, you have the young guys we don't know much about yet, whether Terry McLaurin or Paris Campbell's going to be a big breakout guy. They certainly could be. Let's not forget about them. And then there's KJ Hill, who's quietly had a pretty good camp for a true freshman. He may be on the field. So how many names did I just drop there? 7, 8? There's certainly going to be some playmakers in terms of guys who can catch the ball. Haven't mentioned Nick Manette, haven't mentioned Ezekiel Elliott either. Both of them can catch the ball, too, in certain sets. Ohio State's offense is going to have more than enough playmakers. The big benefit for Ohio State with Urban Meyer's insane recruiting is that they're literally almost a dozen deep at the pass-catching positions. You can make an argument that there are a dozen kids catching passes on this team who are going to be more than effective enough. So, yes, it absolutely hurts. Losing Noah Brown stinks. Not just that he's not available, but how he got hurt and everything. And the way he broke his leg and all those other awful things you hate to see for a kid who's clearly worked so hard to change his body and get himself in a position where he was making one-hand catches. People are saying he could be an all-Big Ten kind of player. It's truly a loss. There's no sugarcoating that. And the Buckeyes are going to be down some depth. But there's so much talent on this team that this team is going to probably be more than fine in Blacksburg. And by the way, let's say it's only Mike Thomas is the big receiving option. Well, if he's as good as we think he is, he's still going to have a heck of a game getting all the targets we're expecting him to get, being the number 1 receiving option.
I couldn't agree more, Bax. I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, we're talking about one game, and yes, it's against a good defense, perhaps a great defense. It's at their place, a hostile environment. But I think if Ohio State was down 4 of their top receivers for the entirety of the season, of course it would catch up with them, or half of the season. But for one game, I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. As you mentioned, Mike Thomas is by far the best wide receiver on this team. For all the accolades we want to throw at Noah Brown, he was still a very unproven wide receiver. He played a little bit of H-back as a true freshman, and that was it. Hadn't even played wide receiver, in a collegiate game yet. So he was still unproven, although I think he was going to have a good year. Mike Thomas is the guy they can't afford to lose at the wide receiver position, so they have him. They have all the guys you mentioned. Braxton Miller. They're going to find ways to get him the ball a lot. I think it's going to be things like shovel passes, jet sweeps, but still, he's going to get the ball a lot. You mentioned a lot of the other young wide receivers like Terry McLaurin, H-backs like Paris Campbell. Curtis Samuel's going to be a huge part of this offense all year. And you mentioned Nick Manette. If they need to, get creative with the passing game, they can incorporate the tight end like we saw them do toward the end of the season last year. Furthermore, Ohio State doesn't need to drop back and throw the ball 30 times this game to win. Virginia Tech, yes, they did the bare front last year. Maybe they'll try it again, but they know Ohio State's going to be expecting it. So keep in mind, Ohio State has 4 returning starters on their offensive line, one of the best running backs in the country in Ezekiel Elliott, plus Curtis Samuel's going to be getting some carries. They're going to be able to run the ball against this Virginia Tech defense. Nick Van Ette's a good blocker, so they're going to have to be effective in the passing game. Don't get me wrong. I think they will be, even down 4 receivers. So I agree with you, Bax. I don't think it's that big of a deal because the Buckeyes are going to be able to run the ball, and they're going to be able to throw the ball effectively enough. I can't wait. It's only, 10 days away, 9 days away? It's just amazing. I can't wait for it. Okay, switching gears. I believe you saw Jim Harbaugh's press conference yesterday. Correct me if I'm wrong. If you saw Jim Harbaugh's press conference, I'm really curious to get your take. He came up from under the submarine and had a press conference yesterday, came up for air. Did you see Jim Harbaugh's press conference? What was your takeaway, Bax?
I saw him, and man, is he a strange cat. Apparently the submarine surfaced to take on some supplies, maybe to get their bearings and everything. And Harbaugh came out on the deck and answered a few questions. I'm surprised he wasn't in like a naval garb, one of those old Soviet Union hats would have been a blue star, I guess, in their case on it. But like he was asked a question about the quarterback position. He was like, in the honor of sportsmanship, we're gonna trade depth charts with Utah the Monday of the game. They will receive ours and we will receive theirs, which led to the question of, so is it going to say who your starting quarterback is on it? And he's like, well, I don't know. And they're like, so, and he's like, you mean like 1, 2, 3? Yeah, it'll do that. And then the press conference, he was asked, well, sometimes in the past it says, or. He's like, well, that's impossible. And just looked completely confused, like somebody had asked him, like, what the capital of Assyria was or something. Like, he had no idea, though Jim Harbaugh might actually know the capital of Assyria. So he's just such a strange, socially awkward kind of guy. I compare him to the guy on that TV show, Mr. Robot, who's completely socially awkward. But I just don't know how to treat this guy because he could be this crazy genius that Michigan fans seem to think he is, but he could easily be just some guy who's, a complete train wreck that doesn't know how to interact with players, whose recruiting process is going to be just very odd to watch because some of the kids he's taken versus not even trying in Ohio, I still have no answer for. And honestly, looking at his team, everybody keeps talking about this mythical, magical, crazy Harbaugh effect. Harbaugh's going to come in and turn these kids into stars and get this team playing tough, and look what he did at Stanford, and look what he did with the 49ers. I'm sitting here thinking, his first couple of years at Stanford, he had a losing record. Let's not forget that. They had one major upset against USC where USC just didn't show up for a game. They went through the motions and ended up getting beat. It took Harbaugh a couple years to get that program together in Stanford, and I keep looking at that roster, knowing what we've seen on that roster. I don't know where people seem to think this mythical, magical Harbaugh effect is going to get them 9 wins. And maybe, hey, if they win 9 games this year with this roster, with Jake Rudock, who is the backup at Iowa, or Shane Morris, who is never going to be a good quarterback, period, because he can't handle live bullets hitting him. Right? That's just ridiculous to think that one of those two is going to lead them some kind of 10-win season this year. If he can get 9 wins out of them, maybe he's a way better coach than I'm giving him credit for. But right now, they look like a 6 or a 7-win team at best. They're not a better team than Utah. They have a really hard September schedule. They're going to be up to play hard against the Buckeyes because Michigan is always up to play hard against the Buckeyes. Brady Hoke was a bumbling buffoon and his team paid the Buckeyes tough. But over the course of the year, them being a Big Ten East contender and a division with Michigan State, then Ohio State, who are top 5 teams, and an ascending Penn State team, and a Maryland and a Rutgers team that still have a lot of talent because they're in good talent-rich states. Oh, and Indiana, who might make a bowl game this year too. Michigan has a hard schedule. So Harbaugh is socially awkward to the nth degree, and he has a lot to prove to me as a coach, as a college coach, because, again, he's had one great year as a college coach, and he happened to have Andrew Luck. And guess what? Andrew Luck would have been a great quarterback with you or me coaching him, Dave. So I don't know what that says about Jim Harbaugh.
The Big Ten basketball schedule was released last night. This completes Ohio State's basketball schedule for the 2015-2016 season. Finally, the Buckeyes have, and we've known this for a while, they have a good non-conference schedule for the first time that I can remember. They play Kentucky at a neutral court in Brooklyn. They play Memphis, neutral court, Miami. They host Virginia, who's very good out of the ACC, and they travel to UConn. So pretty good non-conference slate, and then the Big Ten slate was finally released last night. And Ohio State's only going to play 5 Big Ten teams twice. It's just the way it works. You have a 14-team conference. You have 18 games. You're only going to play 5 teams twice. The other 8 you're only going to play once. So the 5 teams Ohio State plays twice are Michigan State, Maryland, Rutgers, Northwestern, and Illinois. Again, that's Michigan State, Maryland, Rutgers, Northwestern, and Illinois. So then the other 8 that they only play once are Nebraska, Minnesota, Indiana, Purdue, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Iowa. So, not huge news there, but I just wanted to pass that along. Make sure you keep it locked to Bucknuts for our recruiting coverage all day and through the weekend, our team coverage all day through the weekend. I can't wait for the Big Ten teleconference next week for the Big Ten coaches kicking off on Tuesday, because that means Jim Harbaugh every Tuesday has to talk to the media, not just local media. He has to get on the phone and talk to all of us. So that's every Tuesday. Urban Meyer will also be on there. So every Tuesday the Big Ten teleconference will occur, and that kicks off this Tuesday. I want to thank the People's Champ, Matt Baxendell. I want to thank you, the listeners out there. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Take it away, best damn band in the land.